Now that we are through the 7 letters to the 7 churches, we're going to cover some other prophecies. We're going to take some more little rabbit trails instead of just going straight through Revelation. There's some things that are prophecies from the past, some that I believe are current, and then there's also obviously prophecies for the future. And so tonight we're going to cover a little bit of the current. Hopefully, Lord willing, Sunday morning we will be covering prophecies that have been covered in the past, that have already been fulfilled. Obviously, it's a lot easier to see those because you have 20/20 vision looking back. But tonight, we're going to talk about some prophecies yet to be fulfilled, and I believe are being fulfilled right now. We're going to be talking about Israel's 3-front war that's currently going on. We're going to talk about Edom, the 10 confederate, I won't call them nations, I would say groups. We're going to be talking about Gaza, Damascus, Elam, and Gog and Magog as they're coming up. Now, each one of these, I don't know how far I'm going to get. I hope to get to Gaza tonight. I should be able to, but we're going to see. I was really excited about getting here to the Gaza section. But before we go on, there's a few things that I want us to take note of. Prophecy, as I've mentioned before, when we think of prophecy in the Western mind, we think of someone giving a prophecy and then there's a fulfillment and we think it's completed. But in the Jewish and Eastern mind, prophecy is someone giving it, then there's a fulfillment as a pattern. And it keeps growing in pattern until it's fully given. Okay? And so what we're seeing is prophecies, the patterns being fulfilled over and over again, repeating themselves. Also, as you're reading prophecy, you often see the phrase, the latter days. And this doesn't necessarily mean just end times of the end of the world. This could actually be referring to end of ages. The Essenes had the idea that there were ages, and the first 2,000 years, and do you know when that one ended? Or what ended that age? Everybody was all wet.
Flood?
Yeah, the flood. The flood ended the first age. But it talks about the later days, and it doesn't necessarily mean end times. It could mean the end of those ages. And so we need to be careful of that also. There's also phrases that... Yes?
Now, what age are we in?
We're in the final... Well, we're in the second to last age. The age of grace is what the Essenes would have called it. And then the final age is the last 7,000 years of Christ's reign, of the Messiah's reign.
7,000?
1,000, sorry. The 7,000th year is what I was trying to say. You'll come across phrases like Jacob's trouble, the day of trouble, the day of the Lord. All of these refer to the Great Tribulation, what we would call the last 7 years before Christ's return. Now, specifically, you will see sometimes they say a day of trouble. That doesn't mean the day of trouble. It's very specific when it says the day of the Lord or the day of trouble or the time of Jacob's trouble. Those are all specifically talking about the very end before Christ's return. Also, any of these prophecies we're about to cover, if Israel gives back the land that they win in these wars, this is not the final fulfillment of the prophecy. Okay? For example, in 2005, Ariel Sharon decided through political pressure, because of political pressure, to give back some of Israel's land. Does anybody know what set of land they gave back?
The Gaza Strip.
Yeah, Ariel Sharon gave back the Gaza Strip. How well has that worked for them in the last 20 years?
Very important.
Not very well. Twice, Israel has given back Lebanon, land that they took, but in the current administration of Benjamin Netanyahu, he vows, under great political duress, I might add, he will not give back any land. In the Old Testament, the idea that Israel followed was, if you attack us and we win that battle, whatever we win is ours and we're keeping it. Well, in recent years, because of political pressure, they don't do that anymore. But Benjamin Netanyahu, who is the current prime minister, has said, no, we are going back to that, and we're not giving back any of this land. Obviously, it hasn't helped them when they have. It's always been, well, you give us this much, and then they're going to, you give a mouse a cookie. Well, you give Hamas a cookie, and then they want, if you've read that book. If not, don't worry about it. Also, you'll see phrases of Israel when it says it's coming back from the north. This is interesting, and I didn't know this. But my dad brought this out. You'll see times in prophecy where it's talking about where God brings back his people. And sometimes it'll say, I'm bringing my people back from the north. Well, this was a fulfillment in 537 BC when Cyrus returned the Jews to their land. But when it says that he will bring them back from the entire world, from the four corners of the earth, that's referring to 1948. That was fulfilled when Israel became a nation again in a day. And we'll talk about that again, like I said, hopefully Sunday morning. Also, the last and final one that I have, just as kind of a foundation for these prophecies, when we see the word of the Lord, that phrase, that's actually talking about when Jesus showed up and gave the prophet the information firsthand. And it actually happens quite a bit. Now, there's only a few times when it's actually mentioned, and it gives the story about the Christophany, is what they call it in theology, where Christ returns. And actually, the youth group have been going through those in youth group. But when it says the word of the Lord, this is actually Christ himself showing up and giving the prophet information. And so those we want to take note of. And I think we actually come across one of those this evening. So, now I'm going to lay out a rather lengthy foundation for what is currently going on before we get into the verses that I believe are associated with it. Okay? For the last several years, because of the weakness of two of our presidents, Iran has been in the process of refining its nuclear power plants for the purpose of building nuclear missiles capable of wiping out Israel. The Ayatollah Khomeini has vowed to eradicate Israel as a people from the earth. May of 2020, this is a quote from him, "The Zionist regime is a deadly cancerous growth and a deterrent to this region. It will undoubtedly be uprooted and destroyed," and they are committed to do so. Which is interesting because in 1948, one of the staunchest supporters of the nation of Israel coming back as a nation was actually Iran. And if you would have told people back then that Iran would try to wipe Israel out, they'd have said you're crazy. But when the Ayatollah took over, everything changed in that country. Israel, trying to prevent their own eradication, has over the last few years attacked Iran with special forces periodically to slow and to prevent the progress of Iran's nuclear capabilities. Political pressure has not stopped them, and it's been laughable, the weakness of our influence in those countries. It's laughable that we even try. At the same time when Israel has been using these special forces to hamper Iran's nuclear capabilities, Iran simultaneously has been encouraging nations around Israel by making proxies, and they would encourage and support the nations and terrorist organizations around Israel to attack Israel, shoot rockets in. This, now, it's not a current picture, because if it was a current picture, all of this red would be gone. And a good portion of this yellow would be gone as well. But Iran, being a distant country, has financially supported, they have cooperated with nations and terrorist organizations. For example, Hamas, who they are currently fighting down here in Gaza, was supported by Iran. Hezbollah up here with Lebanon, and even here in Syria. Now, Syria, because of the wars, has been hampered, but the remnants of ISIS and ISIS-like organizations have also been helped by Iran to attack Israel and create chaos. These show the distance of the rockets and missiles that these terrorist organizations have. Israel starts somewhere down here and it ends up here. They literally, with one shot, can get anywhere in the nation. You got to remember, Israel is the size of New Jersey. It doesn't take much to fire a rocket across the state of New Jersey. And that's what they've done. And this gives you just I'm not going to read it all, but this just gives you the threats that are possible. Over here, this is Jordan, by the way. This is the Dead Sea. This is Sea of Galilee. Just kind of gives you a picture of where they're at. Egypt's down here. That's the edge of Egypt and the Sinai Peninsula. So Iran has been equipping these proxies for attacking Israel in retaliation of Israel attacking them. In fact, during the last summer, Iran was cooperating with these terror groups, Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon in the north, and multiple of the ISIS factions that are still around in Syria. And they were coordinating an attack so that they could, with one fell swoop, wipe out Israel. That was their goal. But they didn't plan on how ready their allies were to attack. And so on October 7th of last year, Hamas, go back, one more. Right here in Gaza, this little section where Hamas was stationed, they decided to jump the gun and be Allah's fist and attack Israel. And they wanted to crush the infidels, and they did a pretty good job. October 7th, 2023, the Hamas terrorists waged the deadliest attack on the Jews since the Holocaust. They didn't just attack soldiers, they attacked unarmed, the unarmed. I wish, we're in polite company, so I won't, but I have, if you want them, tons of videos and pictures of bloody nurseries where they slaughtered babies. They raped continually the women. They burned whole families alive. They took hundreds of innocent people captive and hostages. There was 1,200 Israelis killed, somewhere around 1,200. They kidnapped around 250 people and carried them off. And to date, they're still holding somewhere around 130 men, women, and children in captivity. They didn't have the guts to attack the army, but they attacked the innocent and called it a victory. In response, Israel waged a war against Gaza that has completely pummeled Gaza. There's very few buildings that still stand where there once were Hamas. While they have been attacking Gaza in the south, by the way, these are pictures of people that... these are just a few of the pictures of people that have been kidnapped that haven't returned yet. But while they've been attacking Gaza, Hezbollah has now started firing off hundreds of rockets trying to hit northern Israel, as well as Syria shooting a bunch of rockets over from the Golan Heights to hit Israel. And Israel has kind of been tiptoeing, wiping out Hamas while fighting a battle just barely enough to get by with Hezbollah and trying to keep Iran at bay in Syria. All of that brings us to beginning of April this year. Israel bombed in Syria they bombed the embassy because there was 2 Iranian generals who were coordinating attacks from Syria into Israel. Well, they bombed it and killed them. So Iran vowed that they would retaliate, and they didn't, but nobody really knew how. So then, April 13th of 2024, this year, Iran gave the largest assault of drones, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles that has ever attacked a country in human history. From all of these areas that you see these arrows from Yemen and Iran, Syria and Iraq, Lebanon, all of these places sent 110 ballistic missiles, 185 suicide drones, and 36 cruise missiles. That's a lot of firepower. It happened in a matter of 16 minutes. Now, granted, it took time for those to get across there. The ballistic missiles, obviously, they go straight up and come back down, so they're quicker. But out of all of that, there were only 31 that were lightly injured and one child that was critically wounded. It was the largest attack on a country in the air in history. Well, then the world waited with bated breath. And every politician said, Israel needs to be careful. They need to hold off. We got to keep them at bay. We got to be careful. Well, Israel didn't, as I said, didn't want to escalate the situation. Go to the next one. Iran being here, Yemen down here, Lebanon and all. They want to keep Iran back this side. They want to keep them at bay while they're destroying Gaza and Hamas, and while they're going yet to fight Hezbollah. The worst of the battle. Hezbollah is much better financially than Hamas was, and so it's going to be a harder war than what the Gaza has. So they've been delaying that attack. So in response, they sent, I think it was 5 F-35s. They didn't do a massive attack. They sent 5 jets, and they hit the areas near all of Iran's nuclear sites. And what they did is they wiped out their air defenses. They flew in stealth, blew them all up, and flew away. Just saying, boys, if we wanted to, you all would be green with your own weapons. But we didn't do it. But we're warning you, don't mess with us. It scared Iran so bad, Iran didn't say a word. In fact, they didn't blame Israel at all. Everyone in the world knew Israel did this attack. But Iran was so scared of what Israel could do, they shut up and didn't say any more, and nothing else escalated. That was on the 18th. Now, all that I just mentioned, and by the way, there is prophecy talking about areas of the Iranian coast that we will talk about later. Just so happens that the destruction that takes place and the fire that is mentioned is over here next to Isfahan. And that's where all of their nuclear sites are at. Could be that what we're going to be reading in the near future is a much worse situation. But that's for a later time. All of that, I know it took a while for me to get through all of that. All of that is the foundation for what we're going to be reading in these prophecies. So let's go to the book of Obadiah. I'm sure that's a place that you all read often in your devotions.
Absolutely.
It's a big, massive book of one chapter. We often hear and we read from the major prophets, and then we don't really pay attention to the minor prophets. It's not because their prophecies are minor, it's because their books are shorter. The major prophets you have like Isaiah and Daniel and Ezekiel, well, the reason they're major is because they're big. Where Obadiah has some powerful things to say, but it's just a short little book. So let's read it. We're not going to read the whole book, obviously, just a few verses. Verse 19 is where we're going to start. It says, "The south shall possess the mountains of Esau, and the lowlands possess Philistia. They shall possess the fields of Ephraim and the fields of Samaria. Benjamin shall possess Gilead. And the captives of this host of the children of Israel shall possess the land of the Canaanites as far as Zarephath. The captains of Jerusalem who are in Shaphat," I'll get that yet, Sherafad, I hope that's how you say it, sorry, "shall possess the cities of the south. Then saviors shall come to Mount Zion to judge the mountains of Esau, and the kingdom shall be the Lord's." Now, when we read the name Gilead, it doesn't really, we forget where that's at. Okay? If you had a Bible map in front of you, Daniel, go down. There you go. If you had a Bible map in front of you, when you mention Gilead, that would be along the eastern side of the Jordan River, mostly in the north and then some over here in the side. But it's most of all of this here, okay? That's where current Jordan is, okay? And the passage says that Benjamin shall possess Gilead. At this moment, Israel does not own this land. In fact, when I was over there in Israel, I got to stay, and where we stayed was just a little bit right on that coast. I was literally looking right over here from there. But that's as far as it is. Okay? But verse 20 says, and the captives of this host of the children of Israel shall possess the land of the Canaanites as far as Zarephath. Now, Sarepta, near Lebanon today, is way up here, okay? And this is the area of Lebanon, okay? That's Tyre and Sidon, which are on the coast. Do you remember the story about Elijah during the famine? And he went to the lady, and her and her son were going to die because they didn't have any more food. And he said, listen, if you make me a loaf of bread with what you have left, there will be enough. And it continued to feed them. That's where this land is at, okay? It's in the far north. Israel does not own this land. That's Lebanon. Here's another one. Verse 20 also says, that word, Sephard, is the way I should have said it. The captains of Jerusalem who are in Sephard shall possess the cities of the south. Now, we probably don't know where that's at. But all the way since Rome was an empire, Spanish Jews gave the country of what is today Spain the name Sephard. Have you ever heard of Sephardic Jews? It's a whole tribe of Jews. They're all from Spain. And so what this passage, if you go back to it just a second for me. If you go back to this passage, the Sephard, those captives, those are the ones that would come back from Spain. Now, we know that those people have come back now. Now, there's still more there's still more Jews in Spain. But they have started to migrate back, fulfilling this prophecy. All right. When it mentions, we're going to talk about Edom now in this next slide. Go ahead, Daniel. No. There you go. When it mentions Edom, this is the cousins of the Jews. Where did Edom start? Who was their founding father, if you want to call it that? I heard it. Esau. They're also, we call them Edom in the Bible. In history, they're called Idumeans. You remember King Herod was so scared of a king of the Jews, and he killed all the babies? That's because he wasn't Jewish, he was Idumean. He was an Edomite. He was of the cousins, but he wasn't of the true tribe. Now, what's going to happen to Edom, we will read from the book of Amos. But the reason they are being attacked, this is the southern side of Jerusalem. Over here is Egypt. Down here is the Sinai Peninsula. Down here is Mount Sinai, just so you all know. When the Jews were coming up from their 40 years of wandering and they went to go into the Promised Land, God told them, do not attack the Edomites. They are your family. Just go through. If you use any of their stuff, you pay them back. Okay? But Edom got jealous and attacked the Jews anyway. And when they did, Numbers chapter 20, verse 18, the Israelites defended themselves pretty heavily against the Edomites. Now, all of these Edomites are cousins along with the Jews, including Moab and Ammon. They came from Lot. You remember Abraham's nephew? He had 2 sons by his daughters, if you remember that whole story. And those are those tribes, and that's all of this area right here. So, let's go to Amos chapter 9. We're going to start with verse 8. Behold, the eyes of the Lord God are on the sinful kingdom, and I will destroy it from the face of the earth. Yet I will not utterly destroy the house of Jacob, says the Lord. For surely I will command and will sift the house of Israel among all of the nations, as grain is sifted in a sieve. Yet not the smallest grain shall fall to the ground. All the sinners of my people shall die by the sword, who say, the calamity shall not overtake nor confront us. So on that day, verse 11, I will raise up the tabernacle of David, which has fallen down. I will repair its damages. I will raise it up, its ruins, and rebuild it as in the days of old, that they may possess the remnant of Edom and all the Gentiles who are called by my name, says the Lord, who does this thing. Behold, the days are coming, says the Lord, when the plowman shall overtake the reaper, and the treader of the grapes, him who sows seed. The mountains shall drip with sweet wine, and the hills shall flow in it. Now, this is suggesting, mentioning the Gentiles, it's suggesting that these Edomites are now Gentiles, that they've blended and they are not Jews any longer. And because of that, they're going to be wiped out, all the Gentiles that are called by my name. Notice down here, verse 13. This says, in that day, okay, that they're going to destroy Edom from the face of the earth. They're going to wipe them out. They're going to take that land. But Daniel, go back 2 slides to the map. This is called the Dead Sea. This is dead. There is nothing out there but rock. Nobody wants that land. In fact, during the Turkish Empire, the Ottoman Empire, they would, because they wanted this land completely destroyed, if you had a tree on your property, they would tax you for it. So, if you're trying to stay alive and support yourself, what do? You cut down the tree that's costing you money. Well, when they cut down all the trees, everything in this area went completely dead and dry. Mark Twain said there's no reason anybody would ever want this. I don't even know if the Bible's true, because this place is not fertile, it's dead, it's nothing. Well, now go back forward, Daniel, for me. It says that the treader of the grapes, him who sows the seed, the mountains shall drip with sweet wine, and its hills shall flow with it. When the plowman shall overtake the reaper. When I was back there, when I was in Israel last year, you would be driving in the middle of absolute dirt, just dirt. And then all of a sudden you'd come along and there would be a whole forest of palm trees. And they would be in squares. Because they have taken what we would call gray water, water from your sinks and your showers. They transfer that, and then they would send it down into these dead areas, and they would plant trees with it, and they would raise up whole forests at a time. And literally, the desert is starting to blossom like a rose. Apparently, my dad was mentioning this in his Bible study. Ariel Sharon said that they have the technology to start pulling moisture out of the air to help their plants to grow. And they're hoping to have it starting to be established in 2025. Now, if that's completed because of their current wars, we don't know. But they are literally turning the desert into beautiful forests and vineyards and farms. And I saw it with my very own eyes. Literally fulfilling this prophecy. Go down to verse 14 then for me. I will bring back the captives of my people Israel, and they shall build the waste cities and inhabit them. They shall plant vineyards and drink wine from them. They shall make gardens and eat the fruit of them. And I will plant them in their land, and no longer shall they be pulled up from the land that I have given them, says the Lord God. No longer. Once they are back in the land, this prophecy says from Amos, once he returns them from all over the world, they will never be pulled out of their land again. Now, that there is a time of Jacob's trouble that's coming, where literally 2/3 of all the Jews on the earth are going to be killed, the prophecy says. But they will still be in their land. These nations, all the world right now, just give up the land, appease these Palestinians, these refugees, appease, these Gazans, just give them some land and it'll be okay. No. It will never work, because God has promised that they will never be removed from their land again. Okay? That was the prophecy for Amos. Now, let's talk about the 10 Confederates. Often they're mentioned as 10 nations, but they don't have to be nations. For example, you have in Yemen the government of Yemen, but the terrorist organization that is in Yemen is the Houthis. Same thing in Lebanon. There is a nation, the government is Lebanon, but the terrorist organization that's creating so much problem is Hezbollah. Gaza, that was down here, this area of what they call Philistia now, or from the Old Testament, that's Hamas. The terrorist organization is Hamas, but the leaders were Gaza, okay? So it doesn't necessarily mean 10 nations. Let's go to Psalm 83, verse 4. You see all these, go back real quick, sorry. I told you quick. These are the nations that are going to be mentioned, and they're talking about the areas. Not so much the people, but they're giving you a map in these Old Testament prophecies of where these people are at. Look at these circles. All of that is the people that are fighting Israel right now. That's the terrorist organizations and the groups, okay? So now let's go to Psalm 83, verse 4. They have said, "Come, let us cut them off from being a nation." I literally read you a quote earlier about the leader of Iran saying that very thing. "That the name of Israel may be remembered no more. For they have consulted together with one consent. They have formed a confederacy against you. The tents of Edom and the Ishmaelites, Moab and the Hagarites, Gebal, Ammon and Amalek, Philistia, and the inhabitants of Tyre." Tyre, by the way, that's Lebanon. "Assyria has also joined with them. They have helped the children of Lot." Verse 9, "Deal with them as with Midian, as with Sisera, as with Jabin at the brook of Kishon, who perished at Endor, who became a refuse on the earth. Make their nobles like Oreb and like Zeb. Yes, all of their princes like Zebah and Zalmunna, who said, 'Let us take for ourselves the pastures of God for a possession.' O my God, make them like the whirling dust, like chaff before the wind." Verse 14, "As the fire burns the woods, and as the flame sets the mountains on fire, so pursue them with your tempest, and frighten them with your storm. Fill their faces with shame, that they may seek your name, O Lord. Let them be confounded and dismayed forever. Yes, let them be put to shame and perish, that they may know that you, whose name alone is the Lord, are the most high over all of the earth." The places that we just mentioned, go to the next slide. The places that we just mentioned are all right there. Now, the only one right now that is not fighting Israel is the place of Ammon and the Hagarites. Some of it up here is, but this is the country of Jordan. Right now, the country of Jordan is, Israel gives them all kinds of money, gives them power and electric. They're well taken care of, and so Jordan right now is an ally. But excuse me, it looks as if they will become an enemy. Now, what's interesting, often these 10 confederates get tied in with the battle of Gog and Magog that we will deal with probably next week. These are not necessarily the same. Gog and Magog, that's Russia, they decide to come down with their allies to take a spoil. They want to get rich off of what's left of Israel. These groups in this prophecy in Psalm 83 want to wipe Israel off the world. And that's some of what we're seeing in some of these nations that have already been mentioned, or these areas. All right, now let's go to Obadiah, and we're going to read a few verses, and I want to show you on the map what they're talking about. Verse 15, "For the day of the Lord upon all of the nations is near. As you have done, it shall be done to you. Your reprisal shall return on your own head. For as you drank on my holy mountain, so shall all the nations drink continually. Yes, they shall drink and swallow, and they shall be as those who had never been. But on Mount Zion there shall be deliverance, and there shall be holiness. The house of Jacob shall possess their possessions. The house of Jacob shall be a fire, and the house of Joseph a flame, but the house of Esau shall be stubble. They shall kindle them and devour them, and no survivor shall remain of the house of Esau, for the Lord has spoken. Verse 19, the south, which is Jordan, shall possess the mountains of Esau. Remember that Edom area that I mentioned before. And the lowland shall possess Philistia. In that picture, that was the area of Gaza, which they are pretty well taken over now. They shall possess the fields of Ephraim, which is the west bank, which is up in the north. The fields of Samaria. Benjamin, which was the tribe of Benjamin, shall possess Gilead, and that is on the east side of the Jordan River, called the Golan Heights. Now, verses 18 and 19, the first half, this was partially fulfilled in 1948. In 1948, immediately after becoming a nation, declaring themselves a nation, the very next day, a bunch of the Arabs around them attacked Israel. And what they told their people was, you get out, and when we take over Israel and we wipe them back off the map, then you can come back to your homes and you're going to get a lot more property. The problem was, they got routed. And so there wasn't any houses to come back to because they didn't listen to prophecy of the Old Testament. Reading the wrong ones. Well, those are the refugees that you hear about. That, these poor people from Palestine, and we need to create a two-state solution, or we give them the West Bank and they'll be okay. We give them Palestine, they'll be okay. It's never going to happen. It's never worked. It never will work because all they're doing is giving up the land that God has promised that they'd have. Don't believe that it's just a two-state solution because in actuality, it's four different ones. You have the Golan Heights, which is up here. You have the West Bank. You have Gaza. And then that's what actually Israel owns. They've given up. Again, this is the size of New Jersey. And look at the square footage, square miles that they've given up to these other people, who have continually attacked and tried to wipe them off the map. Verse 20. And the captives of this host of the children of Israel shall possess the land of the Canaanites as far as Zarephath. Again, Zarephath is all the way up at the top at Lebanon, in Lebanon. The captives of Jerusalem, who are in Sephard, which we mentioned is in Spain, shall come back, and they shall possess the cities of the south. And the Savior shall come from Mount Zion to judge the mountains of Esau, and the kingdom shall be the Lord's. The whole coastal area of Zarephath, which is southern Lebanon, all the way to Sinai, which is down by Egypt, also to Gaza, all through Gaza, all of that is going to be Jewish land. It's not right now, but one of these days it will be. It is, at this moment, being taken. Now, that's why I mentioned earlier, I think I'll get to it. That's why I mentioned earlier, if Israel gives back the land of Gaza, and that's what all of the world is pushing Netanyahu to do, then this is not the complete fulfillment of this prophecy, and guess what? There's going to be another Gaza-Israel war. It's going to happen again. But if they don't give the land back, what we are reading right here is direct fulfillment of prophecy, covering all of that land.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. It really does mean the world to me that you're getting a blessing out of it. If this video was a blessing, make sure to hit that thumbs up button for me. That way other people can find it as well. Here in the link section, you'll find playlists and new videos that we put out. We try to do 2 or 3 a week. You can also subscribe to the channel by pressing on my face and then hitting the bell icon, and that will alert you to new videos. May God richly bless you.